the reason the shutdown is such a bad thing that we need to avoid it is the effect it has on the American working class, the actual workers who are affected by these shutdowns. Now, obviously there are great ripple effects when you do a shutdown. That's why so much economic output was destroyed by the shutdown. But for the people immediately affected by it, those who are furloughed, who don't receive their paychecks, in some cases with the contractors, the Democrats are pushing for them to get back pay for the time during the last shutdown. Donald Trump says he will not sign any deal that pays the contractors for the work that they've done, which is the most consistent position he has had in his entire life. Don't pay contractors. But he unfortunately has that right now as well.
Yeah, and more broadly, don't pay anyone that's already done work for you or giving you money. Just rob people. Yeah. That's why he declared bankruptcy 6 different times. He's like, oh, you were stupid enough to give me money? I'll just rob you. I'll just keep it and not give it back to you.
Yeah.
Right? You were stupid enough to trust me to do a job and wait for me to pay you later? Well, I'm just not gonna pay you. I can't believe that we're in a situation where the Democrats have to negotiate to get back pay when they had promised all along. Republicans, Donald Trump, 1,000,000 times had promised, well, obviously they're gonna get back pay. What are they complaining about? And then they turn around, they're like, yeah, maybe we're not gonna give it to them.
Yep.
I'm sorry, did you run out of money because you gave it all to the rich? And this is an amazing fact. We're gonna have another story later today, but I can't help but tell you in this context. Do you know that the Trump tax cuts, on average, for the top 0.1% equaled $190,000 a year? Damn. So you're not gonna do back pay? We're having a conversation about it. We're having a negotiation about whether you're gonna do back pay for those workers when you told them all along that they could rely on it, and you gave $190,000 a year in tax cuts to the richest people in the country? It's just, they're repulsive.
Yeah, and the cost of this shutdown is real. I mean, you probably remember at the time during the shutdown, we spent multiple shows where we were reading from the GoFundMe accounts of federal workers who needed money to pay for their rent, food, medicine, those sorts of things. And we were saying at the time how devastating this is gonna be for people's credit ratings. People potentially could lose their cars in that time. They could lose their apartments, all of that. And now we find out, some polling has been done of those who were affected by the last shutdown, just how bad it was. About 26% of the federal workers that were talked to by this poll said they used funds for their retirements to pay bills or manage other expenses during the shutdown. So that's gone, and in some cases there can be penalties for early withdrawal of funds and those sorts of things. So that damage will continue. About 49% say they fell behind paying bills, 27% missed a mortgage or rent payment, 13% missing a student loan payment, and 10% falling behind on tuition payments. So I'm sure in all of those cases, Donald Trump is going to work with the credit rating bureaus to make sure that those people's credit isn't ruined and they have to pay far more for things like cars and homes and things like that later on in life. I'm sure he's gonna help them out in that way. You also have 40% who borrowed money from friends or family during that time. That's a great position to put any person in. 20% borrowed money from a bank or credit union, 10% from an alternative lender, 25% went to a food bank during the shutdown.
That's the one that was amazing to me. And that doesn't necessarily speak well of me, because a lot of folks in our position don't know people who need to go to food banks. Now, for a long stretch of my career, I made almost no money, and so I've been there. But most of the people in power have never been there, and so if you ask those congressmen and almost anyone on television, and again I can speak to that because I was on television, and so those are wonderful jobs that pay a tremendous amount of money with a great amount of luxury that surrounds it. I would be shocked if they know anyone who goes to a food bank, anyone ever, right? So the fact that a full quarter of federal government workers were in enough desperate straits that they had to go to a food bank because they missed 1 or 2 checks gives you a sense of what the rest of the country is actually going through. And if you ruin their credit, and for the guys who missed the mortgage payments, right? God help you if you miss a mortgage payment, right? Your credit score being ruined will affect you for years, possibly decades from then, okay? And it actually makes everything going forward in your life more expensive. But if you get into the hell of a bank trying to foreclose on you, all they need is a little bit of leeway, and boom, they're in, and you're screwed, right? So it's gonna have these cascading consequences for all this time. And of course, Trump and everybody else, they don't give a damn. And so to them, it's collateral damage. Who cares? They don't know anyone who would ever have to go to a food bank. So it's like watching a movie or something like that. Actually, a movie might be more emotional. They have no attachment to these people.
Yeah. Yeah, and during that time, there were bills coming from the Democrats to make sure that these people did end up getting paid in the end. Now there's a fight over the contractors. This is an insane position to put anyone in, let alone hundreds of thousands of people. And that is why bills like I've seen proposals from both Elizabeth Warren and Tulsi Gabbard to avoid these shutdowns from happening at all. This should not be one of the sort of standard expected moves in budget negotiations. Yeah. Once every year, once every like 3 years, you have a shutdown. That's just what happens. No, not when it's not your mortgage that's potentially going to be put at risk. It's the workers who have no say in this matter. Something has to happen so that these shutdowns do not happen anymore.
62% of federal workers say they depleted all or most of their emergency savings. Gone. So if you get beyond that, then you have to maybe go into your 401k or your retirement plan. And when you break those, there's huge consequences in terms of taxes, penalties, et cetera, when you do that. So devastating. Meanwhile, to be fair, Donald Trump has privately told people he had hardships during the shutdown too. This is a real story. He said he missed Mar-a-Lago and he did not play golf for 69 days because of the shutdown and the events surrounding it. And now you have to remember, he plays on average about 1.5 rounds of golf per week. Okay, per week. On which days? And he's in the White House. He's supposed to be in the White House. Anyway, so he's like, yeah, but I didn't go to Mar-a-Lago and I didn't play golf, and these guys are still complaining about going to a food bank.
Jesus.
On the go? Don't worry, we got you covered. You can still listen to TYT at our new podcast network. Find us on Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, or at tyt.com/podcast.